You know their voice before they even speak. That slight shift in the air when they enter the room. Your shoulders tense. Your breathing gets shallow. And suddenly, you're 12 years old again, waiting for the next criticism, the next manipulation, the next moment where you have to defend your reality against their version of it. Toxic people, they don't just annoy you. They invade you. They set up residence in your mind rent-free. And the worst part, you let them, not because you're weak, but because nobody taught you that your mind is a fortress and you control who gets inside. Think about it. How many times today have you replayed their words? That comment they made last week? You've analyzed it 17 different ways. Tried to understand what they meant. Tried to craft a perfect response you'll never give. Meanwhile, they're not thinking about you at all. They're already feeding on someone else's energy, while you're still bleeding from yesterday's conversation. Here's what nobody tells you about toxic people. They're not your problem, your nervous system's reaction to them. That's the problem, because right now, in this moment, they're not even here, but your body doesn't know that. Your heart rate just increased thinking about them. Your jaw just clenched. That's not them controlling you. That's your mind giving them permission. You've tried everything. You set boundaries. They bulldoze them. You've gone silent. They found new ways to provoke you. You've explained yourself. They twisted your words. You've even cut them off completely, but they still live in your head, whispering doubt, planting anger, stealing your peace. And late at night, when you're alone with your thoughts, you wonder, why do they have this power over me? Why can I handle a crisis at work, navigate complex problems, stay calm under pressure, but one text from them, and I'm derailed for hours? The answer is simple but devastating. You've been wired wrong. Your brain has learned to give your power away. It's created neural pathways that automatically transfer control of your emotional state to people who don't deserve that privilege. Every time they speak, your brain fires the same pattern: anger, anxiety, the need to defend, to explain, to be understood. But here's what makes it worse. You know you shouldn't care. You tell yourself, I don't care what they think. But your body tells a different story. Your mind obsesses. Your emotions spike. Your energy drains, because knowing you shouldn't care and actually not caring, those are two completely different neural states. Most men reach this point and make one of three mistakes. They either try to be stronger, I just need thicker skin, or they try to be smarter, if I just explain it better, they'll understand, or they try to disappear, I'll just avoid them completely. All three approaches fail because they're all still giving the toxic person power. They're all still operating from a place of reaction. What if I told you that 2,000 years ago, a man sat in a palace surrounded by backstabbers, schemers, manipulators, people actively trying to destroy him, and instead of being controlled by them, he developed a mental technology so powerful that those people became invisible, not because he avoided them, but because he fundamentally rewired how his mind processed their existence. His name was Marcus Aurelius, and he didn't just survive the most toxic environment imaginable. He mastered it so completely that his private journals, written himself about dealing with impossible people, are still changing lives today because he understood something that modern psychology is only now proving. Your mind is not fixed, it's programmable. And right now, it's been programmed to give toxic people power. But that programming can be rewritten. The neural pathways that spike your cortisol when they text you, that replay their words on loop, that make you feel small, those can be redirected, reshaped, rebuilt. And when you do this, something extraordinary happens. They don't become less toxic. You become impenetrable. They don't stop trying to drain you. Your energy becomes impossible to access. They don't suddenly respect you. Their respect becomes irrelevant. This isn't about positive thinking or suppressing emotions or pretending they don't exist. This is about neural rewiring, mental architecture, building a mind so fundamentally structured around internal control that external chaos can't find a foothold. Character count. 4,842. I need to add more depth to reach 6,000 to 6,500. Let me tell you what happened 3 weeks after you started this rewiring. You're in a meeting or a family gathering, and that person, the one who always knows exactly what to say to get under your skin, they say it, same tone, same manipulation, same attempt to make you small, but this time, something's different. Your body doesn't spike. Your mind doesn't race. There's no internal scramble to defend or explain. Instead, there's just quiet observation, like watching a child throw a tantrum in a grocery store. Mildly interesting, completely powerless over you. You watch them try to provoke you, and it's like watching someone try to unlock a door they don't realize has been replaced. That's not suppression. That's rewiring. That's your nervous system literally operating from a different program. One where their words, their judgments, their attempts to control you are processed as irrelevant data, background noise, nothing more. And here's the thing that'll blow your mind. They feel it immediately, not because you're acting differently, but because the energy exchange they're used to isn't happening. They're pulling on a rope that's no longer attached to anything, and that terrifies them because toxic people don't want your anger. They want your energy, your attention, your emotional real estate. And when that becomes inaccessible, they have nothing to feed on but getting there. That requires understanding something most men never learn. Your current mental wiring isn't your fault, but it is your responsibility. Every time you reacted to them, you've reinforced a neural pathway that says this person has power over my emotional state. Every time you've lost sleep over their words, you've strengthened the connection between their voice and your cortisol response. Your brain has been trained, and now it needs to be retrained. You've been sold a lie, and you bought it completely. The lie is this: if you just handle toxic people the right way, they'll stop being toxic. Set boundaries, they say. Communicate clearly, they suggest. Walk away with dignity, they advise. And you tried all of it, didn't you? You set a boundary, crystal clear. Don't speak to me that way. And what happened? They found 17 new ways to disrespect you that technically didn't cross that line. Or they played victim, made you the bad guy for having standards. Or they nodded, agreed, and then did it again next week because boundaries to toxic people are just new games to play. You tried communication. You sat them down, explained how their behavior affects you, used I feel statements, stayed calm, presented it perfectly, and they either gaslit you into questioning your own reality or listen with that look that says, "Are you done yet?" Or worse, they understood completely, apologized even, and then nothing changed because toxic people don't lack understanding. They lack the desire to change. So you walked away. You went no contact, blocked them, removed them from your life. Victory, right? Except they're still there. Every time you make a decision, you hear their criticism. Every time you succeed, you imagine their jealousy. Every time you fail, you hear their "I told you so." You remove them from your life, but not from your mind, and that's where they do the most damage. Here's the illusion you need to shatter. You think the problem is out there, the toxic person, their behavior, their words, but that's not the problem. The problem is that your brain has been hijacked. They've installed themselves as a reference point for your emotional state, a trigger for your nervous system, a program running in the background of your consciousness. Think about this right now, in this moment. How many toxic people from your past still occupy mental space? That teacher who said you'd never amount to anything. That ex who made you feel inadequate. That parent who couldn't give approval. That co-worker who sabotaged you. They might be gone from your life, but they're still stealing your energy, still influencing your decisions, still living rent-free in the most valuable real estate in existence, your mind. And society set you up for this. They taught you to deal with difficult people as if the goal is management, as if you're supposed to develop strategies to handle them. But every strategy focused on them gives them power. Every technique that requires their cooperation is doomed to fail because you're trying to control the uncontrollable. And according to Stoic philosophy, that's the fastest path to suffering. The ancient Stoics had a term for this. They called it placing your happiness outside yourself. When you need a toxic person to change for you to have peace, you've made them your master. When you need them to understand you, respect you, treat you better, you've handed them control of your emotional state. And here's the brutal truth. They know this, even if they don't consciously understand it. Toxic people instinctively know that your need for their approval, their change, their anything is their power over you. So you escalate. You try to be stronger in your boundaries, more aggressive in your communication, more complete in your separation, and it's all still the same pattern. React, defend, manage, control. All of it keeps you in the game. All of it reinforces a neural pathway that says, this person is important to my well-being. But what if they're not? What if the entire framework is wrong? What if dealing with toxic people isn't about dealing with toxic people at all? Marcus Aurelius ruled the largest empire in the world. He couldn't avoid toxic people. They were his generals, his advisors, his family. He couldn't set boundaries with the Senate. He couldn't go no contact with the threats to his throne. He couldn't communicate his way out of betrayal. And yet, he maintained such profound inner peace that his personal journals contain almost no anger, no resentment, no emotional devastation from the toxic people surrounding him. How? Because he understood what modern men are just beginning to learn. The problem isn't the toxic person. It's the wire connecting their behavior to your emotional state. And that wire exists entirely in your mind. It was installed through repeated activation, strengthened through emotional charge, and maintained through attention. But here's the key. If it was installed, it can be uninstalled. If it was wired, it can be rewired. Every therapist, every self-help book, every boundary-setting workshop has taught you to focus on them, their behavior, your response to their behavior, better responses, stronger defenses. But all of that keeps the wire intact. It just tries to send different signals through the same connection. True power, the kind that makes toxic people irrelevant, comes from cutting the wire entirely, not by avoiding them, but by rewiring your neural architecture so fundamentally that their attempts to access you find nothing to access. They can still speak. You just don't have a receiver anymore. They can still manipulate. You just don't have the programming that responds to manipulation. And this isn't theory. This is neuroscience. Every time a toxic person triggers you, your brain releases cortisol, activates your amygdala, creates a stress response. But that response isn't automatic. It's learned. Your brain learned that this person equals threat. This behavior equals danger. This criticism equals pain. And what's learned can be unlearned. What's wired can be rewired. But here's where most men fail. They try to rewire while still believing the toxic person matters. They try to change their response while still caring about the toxic person's opinion. They try to build immunity while still checking if the poison worked. You can't rewire while the old program is still running. You have to shut it down completely, and that starts with accepting a truth that might sting. Everything you've tried so far hasn't worked because you've been trying to win a game where the only winning move is to stop playing. Rome, 170 AD. The Antonine Plague has killed millions. Germanic tribes are invading from the north. His own generals are plotting against him. His wife, rumored to be unfaithful, conspiring with his enemies. His son, unstable, violent, a future tyrant everyone can see coming. And Marcus Aurelius sits in his military tent on the Danube frontier and writes, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They're like this because they can't tell good from evil." Not a complaint, not a vent, an observation. Cold, clinical, detached. He's not describing his enemies. He's describing his court, his advisors, his family, the people closest to him. And his tone isn't angry. It's calm, like a scientist observing predictable phenomena. Rain falls. Toxic people manipulate. Both are just what they do. But here's what makes this radical. He doesn't write, "I need to set boundaries with them," or "I need to make them understand," or "I need to get away from them." He writes, They're like this because they can't tell good from evil. He's diagnosing their limitation, not processing his pain. He's observed a pattern and decided it's not personal. It's just their nature. This is the first principle of Stoic immunity to toxic people. They're not attacking you specifically. They're operating from their own internal chaos, and expecting them to behave differently is like expecting a broken fire alarm to stop ringing. The problem isn't malice, it's malfunction, and you don't take a malfunctioning alarm personally. But Marcus goes deeper. He writes, "They're like this because they don't know good from evil, but I have seen the beauty of good and the ugliness of evil, and I know that the wrongdoer is my relative, not by blood, but because we're both rational beings, and so I can't be harmed by them, because no one can implicate me in ugliness, nor can I be angry with my relative or hate him." Read that again. No one can implicate me in ugliness. What he's saying is their toxicity can't make you toxic. Their chaos can't create chaos in you unless you let it, unless your mind is wired to accept their chaos as your input. This is a technology. The rewiring. Your mind currently operates on a program that says external stimulus equals internal state. Toxic person speaks. I feel small. They manipulate. I feel angry. They ignore me. I feel worthless. Direct connection, cause and effect, stimulus and response. It's automatic and it's destroying you, but the Stoic program runs differently. External stimulus equals information. That's it. Toxic person speaks. Information received. They manipulate. Pattern observed. They ignore me. Data collected. No emotional charge. No transfer of power. Just observation, processing, and then choice. Epictetus, who was literally tortured as a slave, who had his leg broken by his master, who had every reason to be destroyed by toxic people, taught this principle more directly. He said, it's not things that disturb us, but our judgments about things. He didn't say toxic people don't exist. He said, your disturbance doesn't come from them. It comes from your judgment about them, the meaning you assign, the importance you give, the power you grant. That's all your choice. Even if it doesn't feel like a choice because the wiring is so automatic, it is a choice when you're making thousands of times a day. Unconsciously, here's where it gets practical. Epictetus taught his students a framework, the dichotomy of control. Some things are up to you. Some things are not up to you. And peace comes from knowing the difference. What's up to you? Your judgments, your choices, your character, your reactions. What's not up to you? Other people's behavior, other people's opinions, other people's toxicity. Seems simple, but watch what happens when you actually apply it. Toxic person criticizes you. Old wiring says, I need to defend myself, prove them wrong, make them understand. New wiring says, their criticism not up to me. My response, up to me? Do I want to give energy to something I can't control? And just like that, the power transfer stops. They manipulate. Old wiring. I need to outsmart them, set a boundary, make them stop. New wiring. Their manipulation, their choice, not my concern. My inner peace, my choice, fully my concern. The wire cuts, but Marcus Aurelius adds the final piece. He writes, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you'll find strength. Not, if you realize this, you might feel better. He says, you will find strength. Guaranteed, because strength isn't about what you can control externally. It's about what you control internally. And when you control your mind, when you decide what gets in and what doesn't, you become unbreakable. Think about this. Marcus had the power to execute anyone who disrespected him. He could have silenced every toxic person in his life with a single command, but he didn't pursue that power because he understood that real power isn't controlling others. It's not needing to. Real power is a toxic person doing their worst. And you feeling nothing, not suppressing feelings, not pretending, but genuinely at a neural level, not having the program that translates their toxicity into your disturbance. They're speaking a language you no longer understand. They're pushing buttons that no longer exist. Seneca, who advised a mad Emperor Nero, who lived under constant threat of execution, who watched friends die for saying the wrong thing, wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." The toxic person said one thing, you replayed it 1,000 times. They hurt you once. You hurt yourself repeatedly. They live in your head because you keep inviting them in, playing their words, analyzing their motives, giving them stage time in your consciousness. But here's the ancient secret, the one that changes everything. Your mind is a fortress. You are the gatekeeper, and every toxic thought about a toxic person, you open the gate, you invited them in, you gave them the stage, not consciously, but through habit, through wiring, through programs installed long ago. The Stoic path isn't about building higher walls. It's about becoming so selective about what you let in that toxic people can't find the entrance anymore, because the entrance was never really there. It was just your mind's habit of giving them access. Now we rewire. This isn't theory anymore. This is the exact neural reprogramming that makes toxic people powerless. For levels, each builds on the last, each cuts another wire. And by the end, you're operating from a completely different program. Level 1, the observer state. Right now, your mind processes toxic people through emotion first. They speak, you feel instantaneous, but that's not inevitable. That's just current wiring. The first rewiring creates a gap, a pause, a moment of observation before reaction. Here's how you install it. Next time a toxic person engages you, in person, through text, in your mind, stop, not physically, mentally, and say to yourself, I'm observing someone being toxic, not they're attacking me, not I need to respond. Just, I'm observing. Seems simple, but watch what this does. It changes your position. You're no longer in the drama. You're watching the drama. You're not the target. You're the observer of someone attempting to make you a target. That shift from participant to observer is the first wire being cut. Practice this. Toxic person says something designed to hurt. You don't analyze if it's true. You don't craft a response. You don't feel anything yet. You just observe. Interesting. They're trying to make me feel small. I'm watching that attempt. I'm observing the pattern. The emotion might still come, but there's now a gap between stimulus and response. And in that gap, choice lives. Marcus Aurelius practiced this constantly. He'd write, when someone criticizes you, it's not your problem, it's theirs. He wasn't suppressing, he was observing. This person is experiencing distress and project it outward. I'm observing that process, not participating in it. Do this for 7 days. Every single interaction with toxic people, I'm observing, and something remarkable happens. Your nervous system starts to calm, because observation doesn't trigger fight or flight. Participation does, and you just stop participating. Level 2, the indifference protocol. Now that you can observe, we install indifference, not fake indifference. Not, I don't care while seething inside. True neural indifference, where their toxicity registers as unimportant information. Epictetus taught this through a powerful exercise. He'd tell his students, imagine someone says your child is dead. Before you react, tell yourself, it's not the thing that disturbs you, but your judgment about the thing. Brutal example, but the principle holds. Toxic person insults you. Your current program judges this as important, must respond, must defend. The new program judges this as irrelevant information, no response needed, just data. The insult doesn't change. Your judgment about its importance does. Here's the installation. When a toxic person does their thing, ask yourself, will this matter in 5 years? If no, then it doesn't matter now. Will this affect my actual life, my goals, my purpose? If no, then it's irrelevant data. Is this person's opinion a reliable source of truth? If no, then why am I processing it as meaningful? Practice this with everything. They criticize. Will this matter in 5 years? No, therefore irrelevant now. They manipulate. Does this affect my actual path? No, therefore unimportant data. They try to provoke. Is their opinion reliable? No, therefore why am I assigning it value? What you're doing is retraining your brain's importance filter. Currently, toxic people trigger high importance. Must address, must fix, must respond. But when you consistently judge their behavior as low importance, your brain learns, oh, we don't activate for this anymore. This isn't threat. This isn't meaningful. This is just noise. Seneca practiced this by reminding himself, I'm going to meet many unpleasant people today. So what? Not avoidance. Indifference. Yes, they're toxic, and the end is where most men fail. They stop at their toxic and feel something. Seneca went to their toxic, and that's completely irrelevant to my peace. 7 more days, every toxic interaction, filter through importance. Does this matter? No. Moving on, and you'll notice the emotional charge starting to die because your brain is learning. We don't expend energy on unimportant data. Level 3, the immunity installation. You can observe. You can judge things as unimportant. Now we make you immune. This is where toxic people stop being toxic to you. Not because they change, but because you no longer have a receiver for their signal. This level requires understanding something profound. Toxic people operate through emotional manipulation. They say things designed to create specific emotional states in you. Anger, guilt, shame, fear. But those states only happen if you have the programming that interprets their input as meaningful. The immunity installation works like this. When a toxic person attempts manipulation, you consciously refuse the emotion, not suppress. Refuse. You're trying to make me angry. I see that, and I refuse that emotion. I don't accept it into my system. This sounds like suppression. It's not. Suppression is feeling angry and pushing it down. Refusal is seeing the attempt to make you angry and deciding, that's not relevant data for me to emotionally process. You're not fighting the emotion. You're declining the download. Marcus Aurelius wrote, choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. At first, this seems impossible. Choose not be harmed? They just insulted me. That's harmful. But he's not talking about the insult. He's talking about the harm. The insult is external. The harm is internal. And internal harm requires your participation. They insult you. You can choose. I'm taking that insult, bringing it inside, feeling wounded, or I see that insult, and I'm not bringing it in. It can stay out there. Same insult, different choice, different outcome. Practice the refusal. Toxic text arrives. You're trying to ruin my day. I see that attempt. I refuse to let this data affect my emotional state. Toxic comment in person. You're trying to diminish me. I observe that pattern. I decline to participate in my own diminishment. What's happening neurologically is extraordinary. You're teaching your brain. External toxicity doesn't automatically translate to internal state. We choose whether to process this emotionally or not, and we're choosing not. After enough repetition, it becomes automatic. They try to hurt you, and your brain just doesn't process it through the emotion center. It processes it through the observation center, where it's filed as interesting pattern, irrelevant to me. Level 4, the permanent rewiring. Final level, you've observed, judged importance correctly, refuse emotional downloads. Now we make it permanent. This is where the toxic person becomes truly powerless, where you forget to care, where their existence becomes background noise. This level is about neural pathway replacement. Every time you used to react to toxicity, you created a pathway, toxic input, emotional response, strong pathway, years of reinforcement. That pathway doesn't just disappear. You have to replace it. New pathway. Toxic input, observation, importance filter, refusal, return to inner peace. This pathway has to be run so many times that it becomes stronger than the old one, that it becomes automatic, that your brain defaults to it. Here's the installation protocol. Every single day, for 30 days, you visualize toxic person doing their thing. You watch yourself, observe, filter importance, refuse emotion, return to calm. You run this mental simulation 3 times a day, morning, afternoon, night, 3 minutes each time. Why? Because your brain doesn't know the difference between vivid visualization and real experience. You're giving it repetitions, creating the pathway, making it stronger, and then when the real situation happens, your brain already knows what to do. It follows the pathway you built. But add this, each visualization, end with this statement. This person has no power over my inner state. I am a fortress. They are background noise. I am impenetrable. You're not lying to yourself. You're programming truth. Because after enough repetition, it becomes true. The pathway becomes dominant. And one day, you realize you haven't thought about them in weeks. The ancient Stoics called this living in accordance with nature. Your nature, your true nature, is rational, peaceful, strong. Toxic people aren't your nature. They're external, temporary, irrelevant. And when you rewire to reflect this truth, you return to your nature, and from that place, nothing can touch you. Marcus spent years building this wiring. Every morning, he reminded himself, today, I'll meet difficult people, and I won't be disturbed, because disturbance is my choice, and I choose peace. Not affirmation, installation, running the program, strengthening the pathway, until it became who he was. You do the same, 30 days, 3 times daily. Visualize, process through new pathway, end with truth statement, and watch what happens. Watch toxic people try their old tricks, and nothing happens inside you. Watch them escalate, and you don't even register it. Watch them eventually give up, because there's nothing to feed on, no reaction to harvest, no power to drain. You became impenetrable. 3 months from now, maybe less, you're standing in the exact situation that used to destroy your peace. The toxic person is there, doing what they always do, say what they always say, playing the same manipulative game they've played 1,000 times, but something is different. They speak, and you hear the words, but there's no spike, no cortisol flood, no automatic defense mechanism activating. There's just quiet observation, like watching a storm through a window. You see it, you acknowledge it, but you're not in it. You're not wet, you're not cold. You're just watching from a place of perfect calm. And they notice immediately, because the reaction they're used to isn't happening. They push harder, trying to find the button that always worked. But the button doesn't exist anymore. You rewired it out of existence. They escalate, and you remain unchanged, unaffected, unmoved. This moment right here is where you realize they never had real power. They had borrowed power. Power you loaned them through your reactions, through your need for their approval, through your participation in their games. And now, you took it back, not through confrontation, not through boundaries, through becoming someone whose inner state is simply inaccessible to external toxicity. Watch what happens next. They stop, they pause. You see confusion in their eyes, because every toxic person operates on a feedback loop. They do something toxic. You react. They feed on that energy, but you just broke the loop. They're pulling on a rope that's no longer attached to anything. They're trying to drain a well that's no longer connected to your reservoir. And without your reaction, without your energy, without your emotional engagement, they have nothing. They are nothing, not because they changed, but because you became someone to whom their toxicity is irrelevant. This is what Marcus Aurelius lived. He had enemies daily, but his journals contain almost no mention of them. Not because he avoided them, but because internally, they didn't exist. They were external phenomena, like weather, like seasons. They happened, and he remained centered, unmoved, powerful in his stillness. You'll notice other things changing too. That friend who always drained your energy still calls, but now you talk for 5 minutes and hang up completely unaffected. That family member who always had criticism still criticizes, but you hear it the way you'd hear a dog barking in the distance, acknowledged, irrelevant. That co-worker who always played political games still plays them, but you're not even on the board anymore. People will ask you, how are you so calm around them? And you won't know how to explain, because it's not a technique anymore. It's not something you do, it's who you became. You don't handle toxic people. You just exist in a state where their toxicity can't reach you. Your relationships change because you're no longer desperate for validation. You're no longer afraid of judgment. You're no longer trying to prove yourself. You simply are, and people feel that. The secure ones come closer, the toxic ones drift away because there's nothing for them to latch onto. Your work improves because you're not spending mental energy on who said what, who thinks what, who's plotting what. All that energy that used to drain into interpersonal drama now flows into your purpose, your goals, your mission. You become more productive not because you try harder, but because you stop wasting energy on irrelevant people. Your sleep improves because you're not lying awake replaying conversations, not crafting comebacks to insults from 3 days ago, not worrying about what they think. Your mind at night is quiet because during the day, you didn't let anyone move in. But here's what really changes: your relationship with yourself. You start trusting yourself because you prove something profound. You can control your mind. You can rewire your patterns. You can face the exact situations that used to destroy you and remain at peace. That kind of self-trust is unshakable. You join a lineage. You might not think of it this way, but you're now practicing the same mental technology that kept Marcus Aurelius sane while Rome crumbled, that kept Epictetus peaceful while enslaved, that kept Seneca wise while advising a tyrant. You're a part of a 2,000-year tradition of men who discovered that true power isn't controlling what happens to you, it's controlling what happens in you. And from this place, this rewired state, you become dangerous, not to others, but to circumstances, because you can't be broken, you can't be manipulated, you can't be drained. You walk into chaos and remain ordered. You face hostility and remain calm. You encounter toxicity and remain pure. Toxic people don't become powerless because they changed. They become powerless because you changed. You became a version of yourself that their toxicity cannot touch. You build a fortress, not walls, but a mind. And from inside that fortress, you watch them try and fail and eventually give up. This is the new reality, not the one where toxic people disappear, but the one where they become irrelevant, not through avoidance, through transcendence, not through control, through indifference, not through reaction, through observation. Marcus wrote near the end of his life, "The happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts." He spent decades surrounded by toxic people, betrayers, schemers, incompetents, enemies, and yet he maintained happiness because his thoughts were under his control, and yours can be too. This isn't the end. This is the beginning of a life where other people's toxicity is their problem, not yours, where your peace is non-negotiable, where your mind is yours, truly yours, protected, sovereign, free. They will still be toxic. You will simply be impenetrable, and that changes everything, not in their world. In yours, and your world is the only one that matters. Welcome to the fortress. Population 1, impenetrable, unshakable, yours